everything has changed for the global economy. It hasn't shown up in the growth numbers for a bunch of reasons that I'm happy to get into. But be aware that the world is in a very different place.
Welcome to Radio Davos, the podcast from the World Economic Forum that looks at the biggest challenges and how we might solve them. On this episode, we're looking at the state of the global economy and what to look out for in 2026. Find Radio Davos wherever you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and all our podcasts are at wef.ch/podcasts. From the World Economic Forum, this is Radio Davos. We're recording this video podcast at the annual meeting 2026 in Davos and are joined by one of the world's most distinguished economists. She's the former first Deputy Managing Director and Chief Economist at the International Monetary Fund, and she's now the Gregory and Anya Coffey Professor of Economics at Harvard University, Geeta Gopinath. Geeta, welcome to Radio Davos.
Pleasure to join you, Robin.
So great to have you here. You published an article in the Financial Times a few days before the Davos meeting started. And I'm going to quote you from it. 2025 was a year when everything changed, yet somehow nothing did. What did you mean?
So 2025 was a year when we saw the US impose one of the highest tariff rates that they've had in over a century. Now, they brought it down from extremely high levels, but still the tariff rate was around 14%, much higher than at the start of the year when it was around 3%. You also had a lot of policy chaos, a lot of confusion about where the rates would settle. And so you would think that that would have been very consequential for the global economy. But if you look at global growth for last year was 3.2%, pretty much exactly what was projected for growth in 2025 the year before, when none of this was on the horizon. It's like nothing happened. And the reason I wrote that piece was to basically make the point that no, please be careful, don't be fooled. Everything has changed for the global economy. It hasn't shown up in the growth numbers for a bunch of reasons that I'm happy to get into. But be aware that the world is in a very different place.
Let's talk about the two things you mentioned then. Why didn't it have that impact that I think a lot of economists were expecting to happen? And then we'll look at maybe what are these fundamental changes that you say. So the first question then is, why did it not, bring GDP growth down?
So there was a time last year when economists thought that this could be highly consequential and even put the US economy in a recession. That was right after Liberation Day and the April 2nd tariffs. So that 3-day window, you saw markets reacting very strongly. It looked like something was going to break. But then what did the Trump administration do? They came and they basically put a pause on those tariffs and said, we're opening up time for negotiation with countries. So one important reason why things turned out better than it was expected was because the actual tariff rates were much lower than what was originally announced would be the tariff rates. And if you look at the true tariffs being paid by firms as they were importing into the US, that's even lower than the statutory rate, which is around 22-23%. The actual tariff rate in terms of what they pay is 14%.
Why is that? Why is there a discrepancy?
So there are a bunch of reasons for it. One, there have been a lot of exemptions provided to certain products, to certain countries. So tariffs have been announced, but then they've been withdrawn. So the actual tariff rate is very different. And also, if your goods were on the sea when the tariff was imposed, you don't get slapped with a tariff. So there were a lot of exemptions, and that played an important role. Now, the reason why the economy did better than expected was also that there were two important offsets to the world economy. One was AI. That was huge. There was a large amount of investment in AI. Stock markets boomed because of that. That was good for wealth, and that helped hold up consumption at the top end and encourage consumption at the top end of incomes. Countries that were supplying inputs into the AI boom also did really well. Exporters like Taiwan, South Korea, their growth got a big burst because of AI. The second is that fiscal policy, and especially in China, there was a lot of fiscal stimulus in China. Germany announced the moving away from the debt brake rule, and the effect of that is going to play out over the years, in this year and next year. The US economy also has a strong fiscal stimulus this particular year in 2026. So all of that is providing support to an economy that's otherwise being pushed back by tariffs.
And so what has fundamentally changed then? I think you're saying there is still a risk to the downside for economic growth, but are there real fundamental changes that have happened last year that are going to hit us this year?
So the fundamental change that has happened is we've moved away from the rules-based, predictable global trade order. There is a level of uncertainty that wasn't there before. That uncertainty is affecting businesses, especially small businesses. It takes time for that effect to play out. What I'm concerned about is that last year, at least, there was no overall retaliation from all of the US's trading partners. China was the one country that retaliated. Europe did not. But we're starting this year with threats of retaliation from the European Union because of the US's statements on Greenland. Now, that can amplify. But so this world where there's so much uncertainty makes it very hard to make investments and to do business. I like to think of what happened after Brexit. Right after Brexit, there were 2 years when investment continued to go up. And everybody thought, well, this can't really be such a big deal. But then ultimately investment slowed. And 10 years later, you look back and you say, well, this was really a negative effect on the UK economy. I'm not saying that's the exact effect that will be there on the US because the US is a much larger economy than the UK. But still, all of these changes, not just in terms of international policy, but also domestic policy, concerns about questions about central bank independence, those have slower effects, but they do show up over time.
It is an extraordinary time, isn't it, in terms of just the speed of news breaking that someone like you, like economists, is going to change potentially their outlook for their various economic indicators. I mean, since you wrote that article in the Financial Times, Donald Trump's announced more tariffs on Europe because of the Greenland thing. I think that's happened between you writing that and then coming here to Davos. We're recording this for anyone watching or listening on the day before Donald Trump gives his special address here in Davos. So who knows what might have happened in the interim. I mean, just kind of anecdotally, you're someone who's been at the forefront of economic analysis for many, many years. Have you seen a time like this before? Is this a different scene?
Well, I was the chief economist at the IMF when we had the pandemic, and that was something that we hadn't seen in a century. So that was a major shift, and of course we couldn't be in the same room together. We had to be working remotely, so that was dramatic. Compared to that, this is somewhat less dramatic, but still it is a once-in-a-century event with this breakdown of the global order, and we may just be at the beginning of all of this happening. To your previous question about what is long-lasting, I think what's long-lasting is the complete breakdown of trust between the US and the Europe. I mean, that alliance was a critical part of the global economic order. And the fact that that is being ruptured is very consequential.
Again, maybe by the end of this Davos week and next week when this goes out, we'll know if things are being smoothed out, that relationship, or things are getting tough and there's more of a trade war. We just don't know right now sitting here, do we?
We don't know, but I do believe we are never going back to the time when Europe said that they could rely completely on partnership with the US on their security and on an economic partnership. That has changed fundamentally. I think Europe is looking for strategic autonomy. They are figuring out how to rely less on payments that are dominated by US companies. More generally, how to rely on their own internal economy, their own internal security. So there's no going back on that, regardless of how this week goes.
Let's talk about economic growth. In your article, you said, I quote, "The global economy is more fragile than headline numbers suggest." So what are the main risks? You've already described the potential kind of delayed impact of increased tariffs. Are there others?
So the sector that did incredibly well last year was artificial intelligence. That was a big boost to the global economy. I think that's a sector where there is still a lot of fragility. When I wrote the article, I wrote an article last year in The Economist around October, where I said that if you had a dot-com-like bust, it would wipe out $35 trillion of wealth. That is many multiples of what happened during the dot-com. It's a much bigger share of current world GDP than it was during the dot-com. So it can be much more consequential.
How does it compare to that kind of 2008, 2009 recession?
So that was a different crisis. The 2008, 2009, you had also a big financial crisis, but that affected banks. It was much more deeper. It came through the housing sector. It was different. This comparison is more like the dot-com because it's all about tech and what could happen if you have a tech boom that ultimately doesn't deliver on its promise, especially in terms of profitability. So I still think we're in a space where the valuations are stretched. It is difficult for me to see how in this hyper-competitive environment, all of these companies could make the kinds of profits that justify their level of valuations that we're seeing now. So we could see corrections. That's not a statement of the technology. I think the technology is going to be great. But whether all of these companies are going to make the size of profits that justify their valuations, I still have questions on that. So I think that is a very important risk to keep in mind because financial conditions are actually quite easy everywhere in the world, though it keeps changing on a daily basis depending upon news coming in. But that is the shoe that did not drop. We did not have a financial crisis despite 5 years of pandemic, Russia invading Ukraine, interest rates going up very sharply. Could we be building up to a financial crisis? I am concerned about that.
I bet people ask you every day, okay, if there's a bubble, when is it going to burst? And how do you answer that?
Yeah, there is no formula for predicting exactly when a bubble will burst. It could take some time. Usually there's a trigger. One of the triggers, which is what happened last time, right before the dot-com bust, was the Federal Reserve raised interest rate because they were worried about inflation. Could we have a situation this time too that the Fed needs to raise interest rates because of tariffs, additional tariffs being put on, which gets passed through into consumer prices because of the otherwise general high levels of demand in the US that we're seeing? So if there is surprise inflation and the Fed has to raise interest rates, which is not something markets are expecting, then you could see a sudden tightening in financial conditions, and that could prick a bubble.
Let's talk about the Fed then. There is some pressure on it from the political side, from President Trump. I mean, how important is it? Is it an orthodox view that central banks should be independent of the political cycle so that they can set long-term policies that can contain inflation? What do you see? Is that a risk that might be eroded, that kind of independence in the US and potentially elsewhere?
So I'd say there are two kinds of policies on which economists agree. One is that trade helps countries and people. And yes, it may have some flaws and it needs to be carefully managed, but in general, it is a positive. The second is central bank independence, which is that if you want to have low inflation in your country, which then will keep interest rates low for you, you do need to have an independent central bank. Now, to be clear, when we say independent central bank, that does not mean the central bank is not accountable to anybody. This is about operational independence, which is given the mandate that has come from the political class, from Congress in the case of the US, given that mandate, the actual execution of that mandate stays within an independent central bank.
Let's go back to these risks to growth then. You mentioned the potential of a tech bubble or something like the dot-com bubble a couple of decades ago. There are geopolitical risks, aren't there? We've got, we already mentioned Greenland, Iran, Venezuela, all places that America is potentially involved in. There are always geopolitical risks, aren't there? Do you think we're at a particularly risky moment?
Now, the geopolitical risks we're seeing right now are profound for at least our generation, if not for at least two generations at this point. We had 80 years of a peace dividend, especially after 1990 and the end of the Cold War. You had countries coming together, closer integration, peace, and there was growth. It was not perfect. It was absolutely the case that there were jobs that were lost in some countries because of too much of open trade. That was a risk that I think we all have to deal with now. But that said, what we're seeing now, especially with this shift in terms of the relation between US and Europe, that is something that I don't think anybody predicted last year in Davos. There was the sense that we could see some decoupling between the West and China. But the fact that there would be a breaking up of the alliance of the West is not something that we predicted.
And is that something that has global implications, or is it just Europe needs to sort itself out Or is China looking and Russia is looking and the global south is looking at that relationship between the USA and Europe?
It has huge global implications. If you look at Europe itself, I mean, Europe is now going and making trade relations with other countries. The deal on Mercosur, which they signed recently, they've been working on it for many, many years. And though there's still been pushback from member states, they pushed it through. I think it's a statement about the fact that Europe says, well, we need to have some other friends maybe and build those other relationships. Similarly, in their dealings with China. So the global order is being shifted around. Who you work with, new alliances are being formed, however temporary they may be, but you are seeing those shifts happen. This is a very consequential relation between the US and Europe. And ruptures of the kind that we're seeing will have big implications for everyone.
Another risk that economists always flag up is debt. National debt, government debt being a big risk. Is that just being overshadowed? It's still there, right? But is it being overshadowed by these other things?
If we didn't have this large scale of geopolitical tension and tariffs, that's the risk we would be talking about, which is debt. The fact that almost all countries in the world are sitting on record high levels of debt without a clear path on how that will be brought down is indeed a very important risk that we are facing, in addition to everything else that we have.
So where does growth, where can it come from? You pointed out over the last year, massive growth stimulated by investment in AI, which had knock-on effects around the world. You're slightly worried, you're worried to whatever extent that this might be a bubble. Are there other areas that we can achieve economic growth?
I do think AI will help with economic growth. There are going to be productivity effects, whether it takes a couple of years or longer, we have to see. But I think that is an important source of growth because it's a general purpose technology. It can transform all fields that we're looking at, right? Of course, what we do need to keep our eye on is what's happening with jobs. So are we going to be creating growth that is jobless? And that is a risk that we do need to worry about. And I am concerned that especially if this transformation happens very rapidly, where there's a real risk of that happening, you could end up with a shrinking of the middle class and leading to civil, conflict, people protesting. People will not stay quiet in the face of it, lots of people losing their jobs.
How long do you think that will take to kind of...
At this moment, given what we know, I think it's quite uncertain. The effect on productivity, we still have a fairly wide range of estimates, anywhere between adding 0.1% to productivity growth on a yearly basis to 1.5% to productivity growth. So there is a big range over there. Similarly, the impact on jobs, there is a concern that young people coming on the job market are having a harder time finding jobs because of the ability of AI to replace them. But at the same time, there are also young people who are going much more quickly into entrepreneurship because the technology helps them start new enterprises. So we're still in the phase of figuring this out.
The energy price and the oil price is something that is very important when it comes to how the economy functions. I wonder whether, again, that's something like you said, everything changed, nothing changed. You've had the intervention in Venezuela. You've got concerns over what might happen in Iran, these countries with massive fossil fuel reserves. But the oil price, I don't think, has changed that much compared to how dramatic the geopolitical situation is. Where do you see the oil price and energy prices in general going?
So energy prices are, oil especially is going to be in the low 60s. That's the most likely outcome. The reason why Venezuela didn't have any big effect is because even though it has a large amount of supply, getting that out of the ground is going to take time. There's been such damage to their infrastructure that this is not going to happen overnight. That will take time. Iran is like about 1% of the oil market. So it is consequential, but it is not a huge effect on oil markets as such. And there's a lot of supply coming from other parts of the world.
What about the energy transition? Because that was often touted, not least here in Davos, as a driver of growth, investment in new types of energy or different types of energy, green energy, energy storage. We're hearing less about that maybe in the headlines right now. Is there still an energy transition going on, and is it somewhere that people should be investing in and looking for growth?
There is an energy transition going on, and for several countries, especially for emerging and developing countries that otherwise would import a lot of their energy, that is a source of growth for them. It's not just about sustainability, but it's also just about job creation and having to rely less on imported fuel. This is going to be a big source, important source of growth for them. They're investing in it. Solar, wind, hydro, all of those different forms of sustainable energy. That's a direction in which that will continue. I mean, China is doing a lot. I think China is continuing to be on the forefront of the green transition. India is also paying attention, doing the investments that are needed. Pollution is a big challenge in India right now. So even if you are not so worried about sustainability from a global perspective, the fact that you have to get rid of the high levels of pollution itself will move you in the green direction. And weather events are highly consequential for the world, and that will remain the case.
You mentioned China. I wonder if you can just give us an overview of where you see China's economy going, because it's a very different type of economy to the places we've mostly been talking about up till now, North America and Europe.
China has relied quite a bit on export-led growth in these last 2 years, because if you look at domestic consumption, that has been fairly weak, and they haven't solved that problem. So in China, growth for 2025 is around 5%. It's projected to go down to 4.5%. They still have a problem with their property sector. There was overinvestment in that particular sector. We still haven't seen reallocation of resources away from property to other markets sufficiently. That is still a challenge. It's an aging population. The population shrank for the 4th year in a row. That's another headwind. And productivity growth in China has not been very strong. So for all those reasons, if you look out into the medium term, we should expect China's growth to slow to around 3.5% or so. China cannot rely on export-driven growth for multiple reasons. One, it's just too large an economy to be able to grow just on the export side. Secondly, other countries are not going to take in such large amounts of goods. They will slap tariffs very quickly, and they would be justified to do that even by WTO rules because of anti-dumping reasons. So China does need to move towards a growth strategy that is more domestic demand-driven. That's going to require stronger social safety nets for households in China so that people don't feel like they have to save that much. And they have to invest in productivity, moving away from state-owned capital to moving towards much more private enterprise.
And will that, they've made a start in that. Do you see that continuing?
They had made a big shift in that right after the great financial crisis. But then I think after the pandemic, they seem to have drifted sideways, again, back into export-led growth. The most recent 15 plan that they came up with still talks about investing in the new sectors, in frontier sectors like AI, frontier energy sectors, and so on, and not enough on the need to have high levels of consumption. So I'm not sure that they've made the switch. I think maybe silently, quietly, they recognize that they cannot have overproduction in every sector. That is a problem because you can end up with, having to worry about prices going too low, which is a problem that China has and no other country does. So they need to do more in terms of reorienting the economy inwards, relying more on consumption, local demand-driven growth as opposed to external growth. I don't see a big dramatic shift in the policies being made, so this is going to take time. I suspect they'll only move slowly.
Industrial policy. This used to be seen as a thing of the past. Certainly in the West, governments getting involved in economies that many economists would say, let the market sort this out. It's come back, hasn't it? Where do you see industrial policy going from here?
So industrial policy has been around for a while, and I would say China did do a lot of it for many, many years. It's not just in the form of providing a direct subsidy or a tax break to companies, but also in terms of cheap credit and cheap land. That generated very large amounts of production capacity in many different sectors, including automobiles, electric vehicles, but also solar and so on. in the case of China. Now, other countries are also reacting partly to what happened in China. But also now there is a big concern, especially after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, about national security concerns. And so there is this need to encourage certain kinds of sectors at home, be it chips, be it rare earths, be it energy, be it defense, to ensure that you have some level of national security that's still maintained. So I expect industrial policy is going to be here for a while. It is still important, though, to have guardrails, because you could end up in a situation where governments are spending a whole lot of money, which they just cannot afford given their level of debt. So to do it, if you were going to do it in a targeted manner on a temporary basis is going to be very important.
I mean, what are the risks of it, though, if it's done badly?
If it's done badly, firstly, you're not going to get any of the benefits of the industrial policy because you end up with misallocating resources. And you don't see that in growth, and you don't see that in enough jobs being created. That would be one consequence. The second, of course, is if you end up spending a whole lot and the economy doesn't grow, then your debt as ratio of GDP is going to go up even more. And how are you going to pay your bills? So the interest rates will go up, and that will just be bad for all other parts of the economy that are not benefiting from industrial policy.
So we're sitting here in Davos looking out to the rest of 2026. I'm going to ask you what you expect to happen in 2026. I'll just quote again from your article in the Financial Times. The reality is that 2025 was a year when everything changed. The question now is whether 2026 will be the year we correct course. So do you think it will be?
Unfortunately, 2026 has not started off that well, with the US push for Greenland and the rupturing of relations further between the US and the European Union. This gives me great concern. So we're certainly not correcting course. We seem to be going off course. But I want us to remain hopeful. All the important leaders are here in Davos. They have an opportunity to come together, and I believe they will. So my hope is that they will find a way of de-escalating, because that is super important for every human being on this planet.
By the time this goes out, they will have met. I'm sure there'll be ongoing conversations by the time this goes out in a few days' time. Geeta Gopinath, thanks so much for joining us on Radio Davos.
Thank you, Robin.
For more analysis of the global economy, check out the forum's Chief Economist Outlook and the Radio Davos episode on that, featuring the head of economics research at Barclays Investment Bank, Christian Keller. Links to that podcast and the report in the show notes. We've been recording lots of great interviews here in Davos. To be sure not to miss them, please follow Radio Davos and our sister podcast, Meet the Leader, wherever you get podcasts, or at wef.ch/podcasts. I'm Robin Pomeroy at the World Economic Forum. Thanks to you for listening and watching, and goodbye for now.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian
untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas. Unify G Business Mobile, majukan saya.
Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital, melebarkan capaian.
Layanan prioriti, menyenangkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini. Aiskrim Cadbury Hazelnut baru. Anda pasti tepikan.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian
untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas. Unify G Business Mobile, majukan saya.
Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital, melebarkan capaian.
Layanan prioriti, menyenangkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini.
Hamas says it is fully prepared to hand over administrative authority in Gaza to a newly formed Palestinian Technocratic Committee. The US president cannot threaten his way into owning Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian.
Untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas, Unify G Business Mobile majukan saya.
Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital melebarkan capaian.
Layanan prioriti menyenangkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini.
Alright, thank you for tuning in into Niaga AWANI, and today we're shining a spotlight on 3 outstanding Malaysian SMEs recognized through the SME ESG Challenge, an initiative by the UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, the region's leading advocate for business sustainability. And these 3 companies are proving that you don't have to be big, but to make a big impact. And let's welcome our 3 winners. We start with Yang Mulia Raja Ahmad Fauzan, Raja Hassan, the Coffee Enthusiastic Officer and CEO of Belcoff Asia Pacific, and better known for their brand Coffee Star. And in the middle, we have Amelia, the Compliance Manager at Signature Markets in Berhad. And on my right is Christopher, Growth and Sustainability Partner at Ani Smart Sdn Berhad. Thank you all for joining us and congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, to open our discussion today, we want to know more about your business, the background of each of your business. So perhaps we could start with Fauzan first. Can you briefly introduce your company, like what you do, and what makes Coffee Star unique in Malaysia's coffee space?
Thank you. Thank you, Nabilah, for inviting us. And thank you also to SME Corp and also UNGC MYB for selecting 3 of us to showcase our ESG practices. Coffee Star, what we do is we democratizing coffee drinking culture in Malaysia. So we have 2 pillars of business. Number 1, business to business, whereby we put coffee machines in corporate offices, large corporations. So they give the coffee as a part of their office environment
Practices.
facilities. Okay, that's one. And also B2C, whereby we put our self-service coffee machine in public locations like in the airport, hospitals, in universities, government offices. So this serving and as a convenient way to consume your coffee 24 hours. Currently we have about 150 machines across the nation, and as I said earlier, our focus is to providing a good cup of coffee conveniently, affordably. And not to forget that we really focus on sustainability agenda because, for example, our coffee bean, we source from fair trade certified coffee. That's one. Number 2, last I checked in UNGC directory, so far we are the only SME coffee company that's in their list anyway.
Amazing.
So that's a brief introduction about ourselves.
And we know that coffee is a need right now, not just a must. It's something, the first thing we consume even before water. But Amelia, for Signature Market, Amelia, tell us what your brand represents in the health and also wellness retail space, and what actually sets you apart in such a competitive market.
Right, thank you for that question, Nabilah. Signature Market is a D2C, direct-to-customer channel, multi-channel. We operate through online and offline channel. Hence, we have the retail spaces as well as our e-commerce platform. And Signature Market is operating as a lifestyle brand that covers from our own manufactured snacks, which is very well known to the Malaysian market, which is all our almonds, cashew nut snacks that is loved by the Malaysian as well. And the journey of us starting this sustainability at Signature Market is started from us wanting to upgrade the community lifestyle through their body, mind and spirit. So as you can see from our list of products portfolio, you will notice that 500 products that we have, it's centered around upgrading our health and well-being in terms of our body, which is through the food products and the aromatherapeutic products. And in terms of mind and spirit, we do offer like community service that is running every month. Regardless you are our customers or non-customers, we offer it as a complimentary for free. And even there's a surcharge or fees around it. It is all for the NGO speakers that we collaborated with. So running the sustainability in Singapore market is very much run hand in hand with our vision of upgrading the people lifestyle in Malaysia. Yeah.
Amazing, running a business to help back and to give back to the society.
Yeah, correct.
And to Christopher, for AWANI Smart, what solutions do you actually provide, and who are the key industries or clients that you serve through your smart and sustainable technologies?
Terima kasih Nabila. So di AWANI Smart, kami yang fokus untuk selesaikan masalah blind spot terbesar dalam bandar kita. So yang kita panggil ghost electricity, hantu elektrik. Cuba bayangkan beribu bangunan di seluruh Malaysia di mana lampu di tempat letak kereta dan tangga asyik menyala 24 jam tanpa mati. So yang ini kita panggil dia pembajaran senyap, silent waste. So yang ini yang berdara 30% sehingga 30% kos operasi bangunan. So kami berbeza kerana kami bukan yang penjual lampu. We stop the bleeding. Kami tukar pembajaran ini tenaga menjadi kekayaan untuk pihak pengurusan bangunan dan penduduk. Wealth generation adalah fokus kami lah.
So 3 different businesses, 3 different products and 3 different services, but still one same purpose. So moving on back to Fauzan, we often hear that people say that ESG, this environmental social governance, is only for big corporations. So to you, Fauzan, my question, why did you as an SME decide that this ESG should be part of coffee business, especially one dealing with sourcing, packaging and manufacturing, and how did platforms like NGC, MIB actually help to guide and support you along the way?
Okay, in ESG, actually, it's not just for the big corporations. Yes, they do have more muscle, but in our case as SMEs, we have more focus and more niche that we can go because we can contribute in terms of our primary business focus. So that's the main advantage as SMEs because we are a bit agile compared to bigger corporation. They did after one board meeting, another board meeting to just get to come up with the agenda. For our case, when the owner, in this case ourselves or me as a driver for the company, we said yes, we want to sell a good cup of coffee. That's one. And number 2, we also want to make sure that every cup of coffee we serve is not contribute into creating a detrimental impact to our environment.
Okay.
So with that, we already aligned as part of our DNAs. For example, when we set up a company a couple of years back, we put as part of our key metrics is 5% of our top line revenue, we will contribute back to social causes, be it in nature disaster, or be it like people who underserved, or some like simple things like blood donation drive. So we do that, something that to invoke that, yes, good coffee, but also we're doing good for the society at large.
Amazing. That part of corporate social responsibility as well. But Amelia, many SMEs actually struggle with where ESG fits into their businesses. So why did Signature Market decide ESG was essential in retail, food safety and responsible sourcing? And how did UNGC help you embed those practices in your business?
Yeah. I would like to echo to Encik Fauzan's point on contribution as a SME. I think we are, as an organization, we are forming that ripple effect, like as a drop of water, despite of bigger scale or smaller scale. Regardless, we are still creating a ripple effect of contribution and impact towards social and environment. So at Signature Market, how we embed sustainability into our DNA of the businesses is through platform, academy platform like UNGC offering to all SME, regardless they are member or not. They actually provide a very, very inclusive type of resources and training material for SME to actually learn about the sustainability. So all in all, I would say we started small and we still align with our vision earlier, which is to upgrade the community lifestyle. Hence, in terms of our product offering and our services, we always cater to what the demand from the community. Like for example, we advocated for mental health during the pandemic years since 2021, and since then we have not been stopped contributing our community service as a complementary service to all the communities alike in Malaysia. And that also seeps into our operation, whereby we started a circular economy by introducing recycling, reusing and repurposing all our waste that is generated across our supply chain to help with reducing the environmental impact.
Amazing, amazing, inspiring as well.
Yeah,
Christopher, what about you? As an SME, choosing to prioritize this ESG element is a strategic move. So for tech solutions like yours, what made ESG worth integrating early into your growth innovation journey, and how did UNGC help you to support this transformation?
Kami mahu buktikan yang ESG ini bukanlah satu cost. So itu adalah satu wealth generator. Penjana kekayaan untuk semua. So, tapi semua ramai SME ingat ESG ialah satu kemewahan. Tapi bagi kami, kita treat ini adalah satu standard yang wajib. So, di ANI kami mahu jadikan ESG ini adalah satu sumbangan individu. Kami tidak mahu ini terhad kepada syarikat sahaja. Kami mahu setiap penduduk dan pihak pengurusan bangunan sertai kita punya ESG roadmap kami. Apabila penduduk rasa sekarang peduli penggunaan tenaga, so mereka start caring about the kawasan mereka. So yang ni mereka sebenarnya membantu komuniti mereka sekarang sendiri. So kami sangat berterima kasih dengan kepada SME Code dan UNGC NYB kerana menyediakan satu platform dan garis panduan kepada kami bersuara. Mereka bantu kita suku cerita kita supaya boleh tunjukkan kepada SME lain.
Okay, amazing. So now we nak focus more on the ESG wins in the business as well. Tapi kalau kita nak cakap on Coffee Star lah, Cik Fauzan kan, we know realistically coffee can be a very resource intensive industry. So what specific ESG practices at Coffee Star have delivered real measurable value, whether in cost savings, efficiency or customer trust?
Okay, Nabilah, early on I touched about the sourcing itself. We buy the coffee from fair trade certified coffee beans, whereby it's controlled at source. In fair trade system, they buy not very cheap price that the farmers cannot make money. So that's one. That's on the upstream. On downstream, after people use the coffee, we collect it back and we repurpose the coffee bean. It's not a waste. We contribute to local farmers, local community farmers. They use the coffee. They use coffee ground will be used as fertilizer, natural fertilizer. That's one of the initiative. Another one is, for example, the beans. We even sell it in the marketplace. People can take it. People can buy it. They can use as natural deodorizer.
Yeah.
So that's a second. Number 3, we practice since the year 2024. We making sure that we are zero waste company. All the beans we collected, we making sure we receive back, even the carton or even the plastic. We collect at our place and we either sell it or give to producers to do the next products, for example, the plastic bag.
Oh, that's a good
so
practice.
that's our practice. That's for the environment. In the element of ESG as well, which is the social and governance. For example, our team. Despite a small company, we're making sure that our team member is well paid. We're no longer talking about paying minimum wages. All of our team member, despite of their education and the role, we're making sure they can sustain. Or if I put bluntly, even more than 2,000 ringgit now, which is the minimum wages is what,
Was 1,007.
So that's the, and also the governance part. There are a lot of compliance we have to do, and we very public about it. We publish a report through UNGC on the portal. People can access what we've been doing in terms of, we are not just talking, we're doing what we've been talking.
That's a good practice, and I really appreciate that. What about you, Amelia? Within your supply chain or operations, what ESG initiatives that have brought real-life value, maybe through responsible sourcing, waste reduction, and improved customer trust?
Oh, yeah, this is a very good question, especially we are in the industry of food manufacturing. Food safety is our paramount, and part of our governance of the ESG, we actually have launched initiatives other than the community service as well as the circular economy. We are very much interested in also getting the certification from the KKM, Ministry of Health, as well as Halal, and also now we are even certified as a B Corp. Hence, the consumer trust is always top of our business. And as a B Corp, we are also committed to a global movement as a company or as a business, as a force for good. This good is good for not only balancing the profit, but also good for the people and the planet. And in terms of our product offering, because we are focused on the health and well-being of the community lifestyle, the certification also extended to organic certificate. So you will be able to purchase organic certified food products from all our online and also the retail channels.
What about you, Christopher? Across your operations, which is ESG initiatives that actually made the biggest difference or value, whether through better efficiency, reduced waste, happier customers?
Okay, our initiative sangat mudah adalah innovate business model kita. Anyi 000 promise. Kami sedar untuk tarik minat orang ramai. Kami kena buang rasa takut tak cost yang tinggi. So jadi kami tawarkan zero cost, tiada model pentadbiran, okay? Zero risk, tanpa risiko, kita yang tanggung risiko 100%. Zero worries, tiada tanpa risau. So kita jaminan prestasi selama 10 tahun. Ini mewujudkan Dewan Positive Cash Flow. Ia membuktikan bahawa being go green ini bukan bermakna you rugi duit. So ia bermakna kita jimat wang secara serta-merta. So yang selain ini kita juga bertanggungjawab. Lepas itu lampu sudah mati, kita tanggung untuk ambil balik sekira semula. So kita lampu punya lifespan ialah 5 tahun. So compare dengan market 1 tahun kita adalah 5 tahun.
So we can see that there's actually more pros and cons when you talk about ESG, but I want to understand further what's the ESG's effect on brand strength. Fauzan, how has your commitment to sustainability strengthened Coffee Star brand and your relationships with partners, retailers and customers at the same time?
Okay, there are advantages because ESG now is kind of really a buzzword. And in fact, for financing, for example, they have like green financing to support company that doing ESG practices in their business. So to answer your question is, there are a lot of advantages. Number one, we are not just here. Yes, I'm all for vanity metrics like profit. Yes, for profit, right? As a company. Yes, for growth. The company you need to grow bigger. And yes, also for revenue, higher top line revenue. But also, it's not just zero-sum game, whereby you make money, but you give something back to environment. You do something like, a lot of wastages and also very careless in our production. In Coffee Star case, we work with this 4P principle. Number one is the products. Product must be good. No good products, people won't buy. And also people, which is our internal people, team member, and also the customer. Planet, and also profit. As a company, we have to make profit. Within these 4 principles, as I said, it's not a zero-sum game. We can sell good products, but also we can make sure that our products not really giving something bad to the society and also to the environment.
So 4 P's: product, planet, profit, and people. What about you, Amelia? How has your ESG approach helped on sustainability strengthen the signature market brand? That's first, especially among consumers who care actually about transparency and also ethical practices that you practice in signature market.
That was a very great question, Nabilah. I think as signature market, we serve our community as our core part of our business because we believe that the community actually will communicate with us what they demand for. Like for example, when we deliver them the products, they would give us a feedback about how we could improve in our packaging material. Thereby, it also reduces the pollution to the environment. So we do listen to their feedback, and in return, to the first part of your question, how ESG actually elevates our brand. I think it elevates enormously, especially we are able to proudly be certified by B Lab Global as a B Corp certification. What it means to us being a B Corp is we become a business that is becoming a force for good towards the people and the planet. And this has been instilled as our DNA of our organization, that we no longer just functioning as an organization, but functioning as an organism, like something that is living, and hence it's very much aligned to our company vision to upgrade the people lifestyle in the sense of how to sustain their livelihoods on this planet Earth. We don't have a second planet. And on your second part of the question, how do we actually gain the consumer trust on this, is whenever they see us as a B Corp, B Corporation, they understood that signature market is standing for people, standing for the planet. So this would actually aligns with our community's demand as well. When they purchase our products, they understood that signature market brand is the brand that could deliver products that is still fulfilling their health and well-being needs, but at the same time we are actually reducing our pollution to the environment. And with signature market, we could proudly say that we actually diverted like more than 77% of waste away from landfill, which is something our community is also very excited about, and this is something that they demanded whenever they receive our parcels.
Great. Christopher, what about you? How has your ESG approach so far has helped AniSmart stand out among competitors, especially when dealing with clients who actually value responsible and sustainable partners?
Okay. Ia mengubah jenama kami daripada segi vendor kepada trusted partner.
Okay.
Dalam industri ini, kepercayaan trust adalah segalanya. Melalui kita punya 10 tahun VGP Value Generator Program kami, keuntungan kami terikat terus dengan itu prestasi solution yang diberikan.
Okay.
Kalau ini solution tidak menjimatkan wang, kita yang tak akan dapat wang. So interest alignment ini mengukurkan reputasi kami. Klien tidak akan nampak kami sebagai penjual, tetapi sebagai sinking fund protector mereka. So kami bantu mereka jimat sehingga 450,000 sepanjang tempoh kontrak, dan kepercayaan itulah kelebihan daya saing terbesar kami.
Okay, all right. So that's actually summed up the whole discussion on an interview of our session today. But I have one more question. This is to all other SMEs out there, Malaysian SMEs. What advice would you give to them who want to start their ESG journey, environmental, social journey, and governance journey, that actually feel overwhelmed or unsure where to begin? So let's start with Fauzan first, and then Amelia, then Christopher, please.
Okay, you saved the best for last, yeah? I would say not more on advice, it's more on our sharing of our journey. On publicly, there's a lot of information available. For example, I give you 2 examples. Yeah? UNGC, MIB have their own dashboard that people can go and access. They call it access. It's free and readily available. What need is just time for the team or for the business owner to go through and read. So that's one. And equally also, SME Corp have their own PMKS Lestari guideline, whereby you can do self-diagnosis. Self-diagnose what element that we have complied and what element we have to do in order to make sure that we are ESG compliance. So there's two guiding principles that are available in the market. In terms of people who want to take the journey of it, I would say ESG is a collaborative project. It's not just the producer, people like us, who's selling it. A lot of elements require other stakeholders. For example, the government agencies at least should encourage or create some kind of new regulation that encourage for ESG. Take for example, we have done for even for plastic bottle or single-use plastic before. If government come with good regulation, the things will follow. So there's the government agencies. And number two, other companies as well. We can work hand in hand together to go for the same agenda. And even the last is the consumer. Consumer also should aware that there are some advantages and also there are some cost element that we have to transfer back to consumer. Again, for example, like plastic. If you no longer use plastic, then you have to bring your own bag. The same like back. Even ESG company. There are some things that we have to transfer to them as a shared responsibility.
What about you, Emilia?
I think my advice is go for simple first. Start from small. You don't have to be great to start. And echoing to Encik Fauzan tips from UNGC MYB's platform, which I mentioned earlier about their academy platform, is a very, very good start to start looking for sources related to ESG. Because from my understanding of practicing ESG myself in this company, I realized that there's a lot of alphabet soup, there's a lot of acronyms, like they keep on mentioning about ESG, they keep on mentioning about ISSB, SBTI, TCFD, a lot more. Even to the sense ISO have so many nombor ekor, so many numbers to fulfill the requirements. I would say start simple by looking into platforms like UNGC MYB, and not to forget SME Corp Malaysia have a very good PKS Lestari program that I'm very, very grateful that Asia Market is part of this program that enable us to start our ESG so well. And another pro tip from myself as well, in order to start simple, we need to look at a simplified guide. And I have this pro tip for everyone over here, including our audiences, is to download the simplified guide from Capital Market Malaysia. It has a different sectorial guide of how to start a simplified ESG for their companies. So I would highly encourage you guys to follow these three platforms to start simple and start small.
Right, Christopher?
Good sharing. I just need to add on one more point. So nasihat saya
Silakan.
Kepada rakan-rakan SME, so sangat mudah. Sustainability should pay for itself. Jangan anggap ESG sebagai satu pengobangan atau belanja tambahan. Jika anda bina business model di mana kejayaan terikat dengan berapa banyak selamat planet atau contribute social, yang itulah sebenarnya kamu sudah menjumpai jackpot. So dengan model kami buktikan anda boleh cipta impact positif sejak hari pertama tanpa beban kewangan. So jadi di mana kebocoran dalam industri itu, cari jalan untuk selesaikannya. So di situ nilai sebenar bermula.
So great. From the sharing of yours, from all the three of you, can actually show that SMEs can lead with purpose, and that sustainability isn't actually a burden but a business advantage. So again, thank you so much. I would like to say thank you so much to Fauzan, to Emilia, and to Christopher. And again, once more, congratulations to all these three winners of the SME ESG Challenge by UNGC MYB. And you can find this whole discussion on all of our social media platforms, and that includes astroawani.com. And see you next time.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian.
Untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas, Unify G Business Mobile majukan saya.
Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital melebarkan capaian.
Layanan prioriti menyinarkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini.
Di sebalik setiap kejayaan, ada visi. Inilah kisah usahawan Bumiputra yang membina jenama, mencipta peluang dan menggerakkan ekonomi negara. Dipacu oleh aspirasi Pelan Transformasi Ekonomi Bumiputra 2035 dengan sokongan ekosistem dan agensi pemacu, mereka melangkah lebih jauh dari pasaran tempatan ke pentas global. Saksikan Putra 35 setiap Isnin jam 10 pagi, eksklusif di Astro AWANI.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian.
Untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas, Unify G Business Mobile majukan saya.
Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital melebarkan capaian.
Layanan prioriti menyinarkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini.
Dibawakan oleh penaja utama jelajah jiwa SME, Unify Business, rakan digital pilihan anda.
Anda bersama saya Nur Syazwani Safusham dalam Putra 35. Episod hari ini kami menampilkan Afdal Rezeki, sebuah perniagaan Bumiputra yang berkembang secara berperingkat. Mereka bermula